right now, in this moment, before anything changes in your external world, before the circumstances shift, before the opportunities appear, before the doors open, something far more powerful must happen first. You must become someone new internally, because your life is not happening to you. It is happening from you. Every emotion you feel, every thought you think, every belief you carry, every decision you make, and every pattern you repeat is broadcasting a signal into the quantum field. And the universe is responding not to what you want, but to what you are. And if you've been living the same days, feeling the same emotions, reacting to the same situations, replaying the same memories and expecting a different future, that's not hope, that's unconscious conditioning. But today, something is different. Today, you're becoming aware. Today, you're waking up. Because the moment you become conscious of your unconscious habits, you are no longer a victim of your past. You become the architect of your future. And here's the truth. Most people never realize your personality creates your personal reality. The way you think creates the way you feel. The way you feel drives the way you act. The way you act creates your experiences. And your experiences reinforce your beliefs, forming a loop that keeps most people trapped inside the same emotional identity for decades. But neuroscience shows us something revolutionary. The brain is not fixed. The body is not static. Your identity is not permanent. Through intentional thought, elevated emotion, and repeated awareness, you can literally rewire your neural circuitry, reshape your emotional baseline, and signal new instructions to your genes, activating potentials that have been dormant inside you your entire life. This means that the person you've been pretending to be, the one shaped by trauma, fear, lack, rejection, guilt, regret, disappointment, is not the real you. That version of you is conditioned, programmed, installed through repetition, emotional memory, and survival-based thinking. But beneath that layer, beneath the fear, beneath the story, beneath the past, there exists a version of you that is whole, powerful, confident, creative, abundant, free. And the moment you decide, truly decide, that you are no longer going to live as the old personality, the moment you stop rehearsing the old emotions, the moment you stop telling the old stories, the moment you stop predicting the same future based on the same past, you initiate a biological, neurological, and energetic transformation. Because every time you think a new thought, you fire new neural networks. Every time you feel a new elevated emotion, gratitude, love, inspiration, courage, joy, you chemically signal your body to leave survival mode and enter creation mode. And when thought and emotion synchronize, when your mind and heart become coherent, when your intention becomes embodied, that's when you stop hoping for a future and start remembering who you truly are. This is not motivation. This is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is neuroplasticity. This is epigenetics. This is quantum biology. This is the science of personal transformation. And it begins right now, not tomorrow, not when things improve, not when conditions change, but here in this breath, in this moment, with a single decision. I am no longer living as the old self. I am no longer reacting. I am no longer surviving. I am no longer waiting. I am stepping into a future that doesn't yet exist, and I will become the person capable of receiving it before it arrives. Because the future is not something you wait for. It is something you rehearse internally until your biology accepts it as real. And once your body believes it, your environment must follow. This is the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, who must I become for my life to change? Because the strongest foe, RCE in the universe, is not gravity, it's not time, it's not circumstance, it is identity. And when you change who you are being, everything you experience must change with you. Now close your eyes for a moment, not physically, but mentally, and imagine what your life would look like if fear no longer dictated your decisions, if doubt no longer hijacked your thoughts, if your past no longer defined your future. Imagine waking up with clarity instead of anxiety, confidence instead of hesitation, purpose instead of pressure. Imagine walking into rooms with presence instead of insecurity, speaking with certainty instead of self-doubt, acting with intention instead of reaction. That version of you already exists, not in the future, but in the field of infinite potential that surrounds you right now. The only thing separating you from that version is neurological conditioning and emotional memory, because the brain learns through repetition, and the body becomes addicted to the emotions it knows, even if those emotions are stress, fear, guilt, anger, or sadness. That's why people stay stuck. Not because they can't change, but because their nervous system is familiar with suffering and unfamiliar with peace. But here's what neuroscience teaches us. Familiar does not mean true. Familiar does not mean permanent. Familiar only means repeated. And repetition can be rewritten. The brain can be retrained. The emotional baseline can be elevated. The personality can be reconstructed. And the moment you begin thinking thoughts greater than your environment, feeling emotions greater than your past, and choosing behaviors greater than your conditioning, you begin to break free from the chains of your old self. But this isn't about pretending. This isn't about affirmations without embodiment. This isn't about wishing. This is about becoming. Becoming requires coherence between what you think, what you feel, and how you act. It requires rehearsing the future emotionally before it happens physically. It requires practicing gratitude before you receive the reward, practicing confidence before the evidence appears, practicing love before the relationship arrives, practicing abundance before the money manifests. Because the quantum field does not respond to words, it responds to state of being. And when your nervous system begins to feel safe in elevated emotions, your brain begins to release new chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, that signal growth, repair, creativity, healing. Your immune system strengthens, your perception sharpens, your intuition activates, your energy expands, your body moves from survival into creation. And in that state, something extraordinary happens. You stop living in time and start living in possibility. You stop dragging the past into the present. You stop predicting the future based on yesterday. You stop waking up as the same personality that created the same problems. Instead, you wake up as someone new, someone intentional, someone conscious, someone aligned. And the more consistently you practice this internal state, the more your brain wires it into habit, the more your body memorizes it as identity, and the more your external reality reorganizes itself to reflect it. Because reality is not fixed. It is responsive. It responds to attention. It responds to energy. It responds to consciousness. And when your consciousness shifts, your world must shift with it. This is why meditation works. This is why visualization works. This is why gratitude rewires the brain. This is why elevated emotion heals the body. This is why intentional thought alters destiny. You are not here to survive life. You are here to co-create it. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to transcend it. You are not here to react to circumstances. You are here to generate outcomes. And the moment you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to change and start seeing yourself as someone remembering, who they truly are, your entire nervous system begins to reorganize around empowerment instead of fear, possibility instead of limitation, expansion instead of contraction. And suddenly, the things you used to struggle to become, disciplined, confident, focused, calm, motivated, courageous, no longer feel forced. They feel natural because you're no longer trying to change your behavior. You're changing your identity. And behavior always follows identity, always. When you become the person who believes in themselves, self-belief becomes automatic. When you become the person who trusts life, trust becomes effortless. When you become the person who expects success, success becomes normal. And that's when your life stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like alignment. That's when struggle dissolves into flow. That's when effort transforms into momentum. That's when fear dissolves into faith. Not faith in circumstance, not faith in people, not faith in outcomes, but faith in yourself. Faith in your ability to adapt. Faith in your ability to learn. Faith in your ability to rise. Faith in your ability to evolve. And once that faith becomes embodied, not intellectual, but cellular, the game changes. Because you no longer ask, what if it doesn't work? You start asking, who do I become when it does? And that shift from fear of failure to expectation of growth rewires everything. You stop shrinking, you stop hesitating, you stop waiting for permission, you stop delaying your life, and you start stepping forward, not because you're fearless, but because your vision is finally stronger than your fear. And when vision outruns fear, action becomes inevitable, momentum becomes natural, change becomes automatic, and growth becomes unstoppable. Now listen carefully, because this is the moment everything locks in. This is where knowledge transforms into embodiment. This is where awareness becomes action. This is where intention becomes identity. The future you want is not waiting somewhere outside you. It is waiting for you to become the person who can receive it. Not later, not someday, now. Because every moment you remain the old self, you reinforce the old reality. And every moment you choose the new self, you collapse a new future into existence. That's quantum mechanics, that's neurobiology, that's personal transformation. That's truth. And the reason most people never change isn't because they don't want to, it's because they keep waiting to feel ready before they act. When in reality, readiness comes from action. Confidence comes from repetition. Clarity comes from movement. Motivation comes from momentum. And identity comes from embodiment. You don't wait to become powerful. You act powerfully until power becomes who you are. You don't wait to feel confident. You behave confidently until confidence becomes automatic. You don't wait for certainty. You move forward until certainty emerges. You don't wait for purpose, you take action until purpose reveals itself. And this is where most people stop, at the edge of discomfort, at the boundary of familiarity, at the threshold of uncertainty. But growth lives beyond comfort. Evolution lives beyond predictability. Transformation lives beyond identity. And every time you choose courage over comfort, consciousness over conditioning, vision over fear, you expand your nervous system's capacity for possibility. You literally stretch your emotional tolerance for greatness. And that's what success actually is. Not achievement, not status, not money, but capacity. The capacity to hold joy, the capacity to hold abundance, the capacity to hold responsibility, the capacity to hold power, the capacity to hold purpose, the capacity to hold love, the capacity to hold uncertainty without collapsing into fear. And when your capacity expands, life must expand to meet it. Opportunities appear because you can finally hold them. Relationships deepen because you can finally sustain them. Success arrives because you can finally embody it. Peace emerges because your nervous system no longer depends on chaos. Confidence stabilizes because your identity no longer depends on validation. And suddenly you realize something extraordinary. The life you were chasing was never outside you. It was waiting for you to become someone new. And the moment you do, the chase ends. The struggle dissolves. The resistance fades. The doubt quiets. The noise softens. The mind clears. The body relaxes. The heart opens. And you begin to experience life not as something happening to you, but as something flowing through you. And that's when you stop trying to control outcomes and start mastering state. You stop forcing reality and start aligning with it. You stop fighting life and start cooperating with it. You stop surviving and start creating. You stop reacting and start generating. You stop waiting and start becoming. And the most powerful realization of all emerges: you were never broken. You were never behind. You were never unworthy. You were never incomplete. You were only unconscious of your power. But now you are awake, and awareness changes everything. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Once you see the story, you can rewrite it. Once you see the identity, you can transcend it. Once you see the limitation, you can dissolve it. And once you see the future within you, you can step into it deliberately. So right now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when things improve. Now, choose the version of yourself who no longer waits. Choose the version of yourself who no longer doubts. Choose the version of yourself who no longer shrinks. Choose the version of yourself who no longer delays their destiny. Choose the version of yourself who moves forward even when uncertain, who believes even when unseen, who persists even when tired, who rises even when challenged, who expands even when uncomfortable. Because that version of you is real. That version of you is ready. That version of you is powerful. That version of you is inevitable. And the moment you decide to embody them, your future is no longer a possibility. It becomes a certainty. Now we go deeper, beyond mindset, beyond motivation, beyond inspiration, into the place where real transformation occurs, the body. Because your body is not just a structure. It is the subconscious mind. It is the emotional record of your past. It is the storage system of every reaction you've ever had, every trauma you've endured, every belief you've rehearsed, every fear you've embodied, every limitation you've accepted as truth. And this is why change feels difficult, not because your mind doesn't want it, but because your body has memorized the old self. Your nervous system has been conditioned to respond in predictable ways. Your hormones have been calibrated to stress instead of safety, to urgency instead of presence, to survival instead of creation. And the moment you try to change, the body resists, not because change is wrong, but because the unknown feels unsafe to a system designed to protect you from danger. But what if the danger is no longer real? What if the threats you're reacting to are no longer happening? What if your nervous system is stuck in the past while your life is unfolding in the present? This is the hidden mechanism behind anxiety, procrastination, self-sabotage, overthinking, emotional exhaustion, burnout, and stagnation. The body is living in yesterday while the mind is trying to step into tomorrow. And until the body feels safe in the future, it will always pull you back into the familiar past. This is why visualization without emotion doesn't work. This is why affirmations without embodiment fail. This is why insight without repetition fades. Because transformation requires biological coherence. It requires the brain and body to agree. It requires the mind to signal possibility and the here. T to signal safety. And when thought and emotion synchronize, when intention meets feeling, the body begins to rewire at the cellular level. New genes activate, old stress patterns deactivate, neural circuits reorganize, hormonal profiles shift, immune function improves, perception sharpens, energy increases, Creativity expands. This isn't philosophy, it's physiology. This isn't imagination, it's epigenetics. This isn't belief, it's biology. And the moment you begin practicing elevated emotions, gratitude, joy, inspiration, awe, love, not because something happened, but because you chose them, you begin teaching your body that the future is safe. You begin training your nervous system to live in possibility instead of protection. You begin upgrading your emotional baseline from fear to empowerment, from contraction to expansion, from survival to creation. And the more often you practice these elevated states, the more natural they become. What was once effort becomes automatic. What was once uncomfortable becomes familiar. What was once impossible becomes normal. And this is how identity changes, not through force, but through familiarity, because the body doesn't know the difference between an experience that happens in the external world and one that happens in the internal world. It only knows emotion. So when you rehearse success emotionally, your body believes it. When you rehearse confidence emotionally, your body embodies it. When you rehearse freedom emotionally, your body accepts it. And once your body believes something is real, it stops resisting it. It stops sabotaging it. It stops blocking it. It starts aligning with it. And this is the moment when transformation stops feeling like struggle and starts feeling like inevitability. Because now you're no longer trying to change, you're becoming. You're no longer forcing the future, you're preparing your biology to receive it. You're no longer fighting the old self, you're outgrowing it. And growth doesn't require resistance, it requires presence. Presence is where change happens. Awareness is where rewiring occurs. Consciousness is where the future is born. And the more conscious you become of your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, your habits, your patterns, the more power you gain over them, because you cannot change what you are unconscious of. But the moment you become aware of a thought, it loses control. The moment you observe an emotion, it loosens its grip. The moment you notice a reaction, it stops being automatic. And in that gap between stimulus and response, in that space between trigger and behavior, exists your power. That's where choice lives. That's where identity evolves. That's where freedom begins. And the more often you step into that space, the more often you pause, breathe, observe, and choose, the more your nervous system learns a new way of being. Calm instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, presence instead of panic, confidence instead of doubt, power instead of fear. And once your body learns that these states are safe, that peace is safe, that joy is safe, that success is safe, that love is safe, it stops clinging to stress. It stops holding tension. It stops preparing for danger. It stops living in the past. And when the body stops living in the past, the mind is finally free to live in the future. That's when you stop reacting and start creating. That's when you stop coping and start evolving. That's when you stop surviving and start becoming who you were always meant to be,